millennials. I mean, this is our generational responsibility. It is a burden but it's a glorious burden that we must carry with pride and deliver a Kenya that our children will be proud of. Our children will look back and say, our parents worked hard for this nation, and they will want to maintain that status. So I encourage each one and every one of us. I mean, it is beyond waiting for 2027 because this guy, 2027, is too far. It is too far, my guys. It is too far, my friends. It is too far, my sister and my brother. 2027 is too far. We cannot be with Kasongo until 2027. We'll be jumping from crisis to crisis. Today we'll be shouting about Adani. Tomorrow we'll be shouting about Shah. The next day it will be about corruption. The next day it will be about abduction. We need to end this madness once and for all. And that's why I'm here to say, fellow countrymen, patriots, ladies and gentlemen, we need to rise up and be counted. If you cannot stand up, then stand aside. Let the people who are willing to save this country from the scratches that you're falling into and bring us from the edge that we are about to go down on, we need to bring this country back to where it belongs. Wakenya wenzangu, wakati umewadia ambapo ni lazima tuseme kwamba imetosha. Wote ambao mpo hapa mnaonisikiza kutoka mataifa ya nje, mnaonisikiza mkiwa katika maeneo mbalimbali ya taifa hili, wengine wenyu mmeenda nyumbani kusherehekea sikukuu, lakini sikukuu ya leo haina furaha hata kidogo. Wakati umefika ambapo lazima tushikane mikono kama Wakenya, tufahamishane kwamba kama ndugu na dada kwamba nchi yetu inatuhitaji, taifa letu lipo mahali pabaya, na yule tu anayeweza kukomboa taifa hili ni wewe na mimi. Kwa hivyo Jumatatu ijayo na wasihi, mahali popote ulipo, haijalishi unafanya nini, jitokeze. Tunasue nchi yetu kutoka kwa mikono ya hawa wakoloni mamboleo ambao wanataka kutunyanyasa na hawatujali hata kidogo. I mean, out of all the leaders in this country, none of these leaders, even in the military, okay, I won't involve the military, but the internal security organs, not a single individual is willing to tell us where our brothers and sisters are. I mean, this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable, guys. Let me stop there. But what I can tell you is that we have power within our hands. We have power within our limits. And there is no military, there is no president, there is no security force, there is no position that can stop a people that is united. That is my parting shot. If you want to do this, we can do it. But if you want to sit back and enjoy yourself and say, you guys talk about Mandamano and everything, nothing ever happened. This is the time, this is the moment. We go to take our country back. Thank you, Kioti.
Okay, shukran, Lavani, and of course, Kasongo must go.
Kasongo, yeah. Mombali nanga. Kasongo, mbona we songa libala. Oh, yeah. Kasongo, mbona we Mombali nanga.
That guy must go. He must go. Yani, when at times unakanga hivi unashangaa, what kind of a country are we living in? Yani, tunajua tu what is happening. And we know who is the genesis of everything that is happening. We know who is the mastermind. Hey, jamani. Tutaishi hivi kweli? Kuna jamaa anaitwa Paris Abel Ase. Nataka nimpatie alafu nipatie Jonte and then I can bring in Mufiora. Abel, niaje? Abel.
Okay. Hello guys.
Yes, tunakusikia.
Mnasikia? Okay. Hello guys. So mimi, all has been said and just wanted to add no more. So let's meet on Monday. That's all I have for such now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. On Monday it is. Na sio tu Monday. Musiseme tu Monday. We are doing it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Ukichoka Monday, tulia utakuja Wednesday. Lakini ufai kutulia because ukichoka ni unajua mtafutaji achoki. Akichoka atakuwa ashapata. So from Monday until Ruto must go, because honestly we know who is the genesis of everything that is happening in our country. So Jonte, yaje? Jonte, sijui kama unanisikia. Okay, sawa. When you are ready, kindly you'll come back.
Meanwhile, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has accused President William Ruto of sanctioning the abductions of young Kenyan men who have defied with the Kenya Kwanza administration on social media. Rigathi says the abductions are being conducted by a secret police unit. His position being corroborated by NARC Kenya party leader Martha Karua, who also condemned the abductions while calling for the immediate release of the abductees. The Law Society of Kenya has also called out the Inspector General of Police for being economical with the truth, as Bridget Sangana now reports.
Merry Christmas, good people.
Merry Christmas.
Speaking at his Madera home in Nyeri County, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua blamed his former boss, President William Ruto, for masterminding the forced disappearances of young men and women who have expressed their dissatisfaction with his leadership, especially on social media.
This is the first administration in the history of this country to target children for repression and persecution. Even the colonial administration, brutal as it was, it never went for the children.
Rigathi says the continued abductions have vindicated his statements in the wake of the June anti-government protests, and he believes the abductions are being organized by a secret police force operating within Nairobi's central business district.
There is a building in Nairobi, the 21st floor, in the city center, where this unit is operating from, led by a certain Mr. Abel. Will be giving a second name the next 1 week or so. Is a unit of officers drawn from across security agencies that are not under the command of the Inspector General of Police. Abel is a cousin to a very senior government official in this administration. And if this unit is not dismantled, we'll be giving the name of the building and the full names of that officer and his cousin in this administration.
NARC Kenya party leader Martha Karua siding with the former deputy president in demanding for the release of the abductees.
I know it is security agencies commanded from the State House, and I'm saying that without batting an eyelid. We are reminding William Ruto that Kenya has a constitution, and we are demanding that all abducted persons be released forthwith to celebrate the festivities with their families the way William Ruto is celebrating with his children.
In a statement to newsrooms, the Law Society of Kenya called for the resignation of the Inspector General of Police, Douglas Kanja, for failing to provide the whereabouts of the missing Kenyans, yet his officers have been implicated to be behind the forced disappearances. According to the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, 82 Kenyans have disappeared in unclear circumstances of forceful abduction since the June anti-government protests in the country. The Law Society of Kenya is now calling on the parents who've been affected to come forward and make reports with them as they anticipate to lodge cases against the government. Kenyans have also raised their voices against the abductions.
So mimi nasema hii mambo kwa abduct, hii mambo iishe bana jo. Unajua hadi inatupea wasiwasi kwa street. Vijana kwa udwa wanashangaa hadi saa kunaendaje.
Gava, kasi nyinyi nando na abduct watu. Ni akina nani? Mnafaa kutafuta watu. Ndio mnasema si nyinyi, ni masanse. lakini sisi tuko sure ni nyinyi.
The IG accepting that it is not the police, it only means that he is incompetent, that he can't do his work, that he needs to leave the office. That's the only thing.
Bridget, Ghana, NTV.
Now, the launch and implementation of the Social Health Authority by the Kenya Kwanza government is Kenya's strategy towards attaining universal health coverage for the fourth time. Despite teething problems that have pushed many Kenyans to the wall and in some instances paying out of pocket, many Kenyans still do not have an understanding of this new model and what to expect from it. And we sat down with the State Department of Medical Services Principal Secretary at the Ministry of Health, Harry Kimtai, to highlight key strategies that will steer this health plan.
2 months since the implementation of the Social Health Insurance Fund under the Social Health Authority, and the country is still trying to get its grounding. Kenyans are expected to contribute 2.75% of their monthly contributions, with an outpatient capitation at 900 Kenya shillings, down from 1,200 Kenya shillings under the defunct NHIF. But how exactly is this money going to be utilized?
The contributions where we pay 900 is basically the capitation fee that we pay to the facilities, and these facilities are categorized. They're categorized into 2 levels, which is level 2 and level 3. How they're supposed to offer service is based on the capitation, the number of population that visit that facility times the 900 shillings that they are supposed to pay. And then that is remitted to them on a quarterly basis. So they are supposed to treat the patients free, because level 2 and level 3, it is free primary health care services that we offer those levels. So this, we assume, will be able to suffice for those levels. We also did open this to level 4 because we realized that some of the populations where the level 2 and level 3 are is a bit far. So we elected some of the level 4s to also offer such kind of services where it is capitated. So that's on capitation. So we believe that is sufficient enough because it is dealing with the minor ailments.
There have been several challenges that have been highlighted under the Social Health Authority. Was this system rushed?
No, it's not been rushed. We just faced challenges. We realized there was no proper legal framework because we're using the old. The way NHIF was delivering, and you want to deliver social health, universal health care, it was impossible. With the challenges of NHIF in itself, it's impossible. Collections, when we tried raising the collections through the NHIF Act, FKE, went to court. Stop to that. I said, okay, so what do you do? So, okay, let's start afresh. So we developed a legal framework that provided for 3 acts. The Primary Healthcare Act, the Digital Health Act, the Facility Improvement Act, and the Social Health Insurance Act. 4. Each with specific functionalities.
Then again, how much has the Social Health Authority collected since its implementation in October?
For the first month, we collected about 6.4 billion. The second month, it slightly dropped to about, I think it's about 5.3 billion Kenya shillings. We also want to encourage Kenyans to pay. Maybe they paid the first month. They have not paid their second month, all right? Because we told them pay monthly for the time being. You know, we want those who are unemployed to pay the entire amount upfront. But again, we faced, there was a lot of you and cry, Kenyan saying, why do you want me to pay everything at a go? So we've opened up for them for a period of, we agreed for a period of 3 or 4 months as we develop what's called the insurance premium financing.
How much does the Social Health Authority owe facilities in claims?
2.1 billion, yeah, of which we have paid. The second month was another, I think they're telling me they're still doing, they've paid 1.1 billion clauses, the transition clauses provided for Social Health Authority taking over the liabilities and assets of NHIF. So we had to do an estimate how much is due and whatever. That's why you get this 29, about 30 billion Kenyan shillings. So what is being processed through the NHIF system, I've told you as of 4th of October, was 19 billion.
The Ministry of Health announced that it will review the Social Health Authority tariffs. But why is this the case?
We are not reviewing benefits every quarter. We are saying these benefits, it's yearly benefits. Mark you, is inflation, and change, innovation, all right? So we also have to be responsive to the market. So we can't have that forever. The cost of drugs are either going up, and therefore we don't want the patients also being, as you pay, right? As you pay, you should have commensurate, all right? There should be some where we look at if all of us have paid, all right? And the cost of this service is being procured at this much. And I can tell you, I'll only cover up to 50 or 60%. So the 40%, you say you have to go back to your pocket, isn't it? So we want to review this. Either some are too high, right? Or others are too low.
During an interview with NTV, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua mentioned that the 104 billion Safaricom has used to implement this new system could have costed the taxpayer way less. From where you sit, because you're in the front lines of this implementation, is this indeed the case?
No, the person then who was carrying out the interview would not have asked why now and not that time.
Experts have told me that it was possible to improve the existing system that was in NHIF at a cost of between 700 to 800 million. Here we are spending over 100 billion. And from where I sit, when I look at the whole rush of this share shifting, it is because of this 104 billion. That is where the issue is.
When I give you a figure, 104 billion, you might ask yourself, wow, this is a lot of money. But then you do costing of what is it supposed to do, is when you realize it might be less. Because we are supposed to do so much. But we will work within now the budget that we've agreed so that we're able to achieve much. So in terms of the scope, we believe there's value for money.
With that being said, Safaricom has also contracted another local company called Savannah to implement the digital health system.
Why did we pick Safaricom? Because of the wide network and Safaricom being a national one of listed companies that has shown that they're able to deliver where technology is required. Now, Safaricom cannot do everything alone. They have partners. They have to bring in consortium members. So we could not put a lot of, say, micro, I can call it micro or mini, right? We had to have, say, this is the scope.
What of instances where a Kenyan would be under declaring their income and cheating the system?
So if you are cheating the system, it's okay. What you're telling you, you make your declaration, all right? We're also not just leaving you there. we shall be doing your assessment. We shall be continuously also reviewing your assessment. Because we want every Kenyan to pay an average price that, based on your income.
And for the employed,
the responsibility is vested on your employer. Those we follow, we do audits on the employer payroll and know exactly how much are your employees, how much are you paying your employees, and how much is supposed to deduct from your employees. In the event that such an employer does not remit the deductions, then the law makes a provisions for penalties to the employee for not or deducting and not remitting to Social Health Authority.
how will teenage mothers be able to get services under the Social Health Authority and even under Linda Mama?
As a ministry, we came up with a policy to guide that, and we have guided Social Health Authority to allow now registration as a teenage mother. And then they are, because they are now in the Linda Mama program, so it's not a big challenge to us. They will pay for them as teenage mothers. So we've opened that. The fact that they have gone to the facility for antenatal, they are able to be identified.
Kenyans have raised concerns over data protection, especially with the new digital health system. Can you assure Kenyans that their data will be protected?
The Ministry and State Department for Medical Services followed the requirements of data protection laws. We complied. We did an impact assessment, and we submitted the reports to Office of the Data Protection, and we were given the acceptance to proceed with implementation because the data of Kenyans is protected in accordance to the Data Protection Act.
Clinical officers have been on the streets condemning the Social Health Authority Board Chair, Dr. Abdi Mohammed, of discriminating them.
We have more than 1,000 facilities that have been registered by the Clinic Officers Council. We have over 5,000 specialized clinic officers. These people, under the NHIF, they were offering services to Kenyans. But now the SHA board has decided only those registered by the KMPDC can be registered and contracted or can do pre-authorization. Clinical officer, including specialist clinical officer, are now forced to go through an individual who are registered under the KMPDC.
I'm not seeing the challenge between SHA and the Clinical Officers Council and unions. We said we are streamlining the healthcare system. We are reorganizing the healthcare system. We looked at how do we onboard facilities. First step, we said, okay, fine. The regulator that has a wider mandate is the Kenya Medical and Dentist Practitioners Council, which is supposed to inspect every facility and license and categorize that license, that facility. It is KMPDC. We don't deny what the provisions of the Clinical Council, the Council Act also says in terms of who is the Clinical Council, what Clinical Council can do. We're not refusing. It is there, it is provided for in the law. They can license you as a clinical officer, that's a requirement. And also, when you declare that I want to operate from here, they can also license that facility or that premise or that room for you to offer that service. That's okay. But the wider mandate goes back to the KMPDC. Mark you, even before, it was the NHIF who were visiting these places. They have licensed the place, but NHIF will again visit and go and file a report and panel and then come on contract before. So we said, okay, no, it can't be like this. Let's give it the regulators. So we want to make sure that when we do an audit trail, who did what? We've had cases where we have lost patients just because of negligence here, negligence there, who did what. The problem is, then they said, no, why you are favoring doctor? We are not favoring anybody.
Helen Aura, NTV.
All right, and that at least 8 tragic incidents have been recorded at Hilo Gold mining site in Dabel, Marsabit County since its closure in March this year, with 30 people reportedly losing their lives. The mines were closed following an eruption of ethnic clashes among 2 rival mining groups that led to the death of 13 miners. But how do illegal miners access the restricted and heavily guarded mining sites? Investigations have revealed that security officers collude with the miners and allow them into the mines. Residents interviewed by NTV said by parting with between 2,000 and 5,000 Kenya shillings, the miners are allowed to enter the pits and scoop ore, which is packed into bags. And as NTV's Margaret Kimathi reports, Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja is on the spot for denying any deaths reported on the 10th of December incident where 5 miners died.
On 11th December 2024, Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja made an impromptu visit to Moyale, Marsabit County, following reports that 5 illegal gold miners were buried alive at Hilo gold mining sites in the Bell location when a mine collapsed. But in a surprising turn of events, the Inspector General of Police issued a statement denying that there had been deaths at the mines. This didn't go well with the residents who had lost their loved ones in the mines. NTV set out on a fact-finding mission to establish the truth. Located 60 kilometers from Moyale town is the Bell Center that has thrust Marsabit County into the limelight following the presence of huge gold deposits. However, the community here say they have not benefited directly from this boom as they have been sidelined by other communities. At Gode village, a somber mood engulfs Mzee Roba's home, where mourners are gathered. They are struggling to come to terms with the loss of 2 promising lives, cut short by the collapsed mines. They lead us to the graveyard about 4 kilometers away, where 2 young men are buried. Beneath the 2 molds of soil lie 21-year-old Edin Mohammed and his friend, whose identity could not be immediately established. They were laid to rest on 10th December in line with the Muslim burial rites. Edin's father, Mohammed Roba, recounts how his son left for Hilo, about 100 kilometers from their home, 2 weeks before he met his death.
Asubuhi mimi nilikuwa mchungaji, nilikuwa kwa ngamia, nilisikia hiyo incident ilihappen vile maneno ilihappen, nikaamua mimi, nilikuwa najua kijana wangu pia alikuwa hiyo side, nikakimbia nikaulizia, nikaambiwa pia is one of them mwenye alikufa akaangukiwa na mchanga. So vile nilikuwa mbali kabisa, the moment nimefika hapo kijana alikuwa ashachukuliwa akaletwa tu hapo kwa plot.
Mohammed says for illegal miners to access the crossed mines, they have to part with at least 2,000 shillings to make the police officers manning the site look the other way.
Uchimba kisima lazima walipe per person, mtu analipa 1,000 na ukiteremka na gunia yako pia gunia unalipa 2,000. Sasa usiku ndo alikuwa wakateremka wakalipa ndo ikamhapenia hiyo incident.
The family is accusing the Inspector General of Police of lying about the death of poor miners, whose death could have been averted had it not been the greed for money exhibited by law enforcement officers.
Mchanga wakitoka nao kishimo wanaenda kutafuta dhahabu ndani. Hawauzio mchanga, wanabatisha, wanatafuta dhahabu ndani, saa zingine hata hawapati.
Nimesikia mbaya hata familia yetu watu wamekufa, serikali haijasema hajakufa.
At Olabula village, another family is struggling to come to terms with the death of their 16-year-old son, Ibrahim Hassan Katelo. He died on the same night he decided to leave the boda business to venture into the lucrative gold mining business in the hope of making a financial breakthrough.
Mimi nimesikia uchungu sana. Nahisi ni kama serikali ilisababisha kifo chake, na kwa sababu ndugu yangu alikufa kifo cha uchungu sana.
Na kulingana na serikali wanajua hilo imefungwa, lakini kuna watu wanakaa hapo juu in the name of wamefunga wajafunga, wanaachilia raia wanaingia hapo ndani, maraia wanakufa hapo, na si mara moja na si mara mbili. Mbeleni pia walikuwa wamekufa mara kadhaa, na this time wameficha, hawajasikia kitu kama hiyo mbeleni, lakini sasa wameficha wakisema hakuna raia wote wamekufa hapo. Wamesikia mbaya sana, na wanataka serikali wachukue hatua, wakompensate watu wao na wahakikishe kuwa hiyo kitu mara nyingine haitarudia.
When 30-year-old Rashid Adan left his home at Misa location for the Ilo gold mines on the night of May 23rd, 2024, he expected to go back home with enough money to feed his family. It was his first attempt at mining, and he badly needed to have a taste of the gold cash. The miners were swimming in at Ilo mines just about 5 kilometers from his home. But in what has turned out to be an area where death lurks in the darkness as miners sneak into the mines, Adan never returned home. He was trapped in the mines and died.
Kabla hiyo kisa kufanyika, alitupigia simu asubuhi akatueleza kwamba kuna vitu anafanya huko kwa kichaka. Baada kukaa masaa mawili hivi tukapata habari kana kwamba amefariki. Maisha bila si rahisi, tunagangana, lakini sio rahisi vile ilikuwa wakati tulikuwa na yeye. Zamani ni yeye ndo analinda watoto, ni yeye ndo anasaidia watoto, ni yeye ndo anasaidia watoto wapate kila kitu, lakini sasa ni mama tu peke yake, hakuna mwingine anaweza msaidia. Hizi mambo na mining hakuna faida yenye tunapata, ni hasara tu. Si mara moja kupata hasara, ni mara mingi. Tumepitia changamoto mingi sana.
Contacted for a comment on 22nd December by Nation Media Group in a telephone interview, Charles Naibei, Eastern Regional Police Commander, maintained that police had not received any information regarding the deaths. Since its closure in March 2024, about 8 tragic cases of mines collapse have been recorded, with 30 deaths being reported, as majority remain unreported, according to local leaders. In March 2024, 13 people died following an eruption of ethnic clashes among 2 rival mining groups. In May, 5 people died after they were buried alive when a mining pit collapsed. In July 14, 2024, 5 other people were reportedly killed after entering the goldfield forcefully. In the same month, 2 people died, including a police officer, when enraged miners swarmed the heavily guarded gold mines. In December, 5 illegal gold miners were buried alive when a mine collapsed. At the mining sites, the government is backfilling the pits to streamline mining operations in readiness for official reopening planned for early next year. Besides miners from Marsabit County, Ilo Gold Rush had since 2022 and before its closure attracted miners from other counties including Migori, Kisumu, Siaya and Homa Bay. However, reports indicate that 80% of miners are from Ethiopia, Somalia, Tanzania, Uganda and Democratic Republic of Congo.
So hii ardhi yetu wamekuja kukaa kwa nguvu, wanashimba shimo, wameharibu mazingira, indigenous tree yote hakuna, wameharibu mazingira yetu. Tulikuwa na wanyamapori zimeisha, sababu ni watu kutoka influx kutoka Ethiopia ndio wameimaliza. Ugonjwa kolera juzi watu hapa wale watu wamekufia ni watu 11. Hiyo yote inatokana na hiyo watu ya Ethiopia.
Imeto affect kabisa kwa kila namna, kwani hiyo area ni area ya terrorist zone, ni mficho ya ugaidi, kwani wakora wa kila aina kutoka Mombasa, kutoka Nairobi, kutoka Sudan, kutoka Somalia, kutoka Ethiopia kule Addis Ababa, majangili yote wako hapa. Ilikuwa ni area ya illicit drugs, area ambaye rape case naendelea.
On 6 December, Marsabit Governor Mohamud Ali held a meeting with leaders of 6 ethnic communities and Peace Committee in Moyale Sub-County, who updated on preparations of the planned reopening of the mines.
Unfortunately, some of our own policemen, we discovered that they were tempted and they allowed some people access. So severally, there were deaths which were reported, even after the closure, because those activities were allowed at night. Clearly, it was an illegal activity and it was being done at night.
Ali was, however, incensed by IG Kanja's statement about the deaths, saying that illegal mining activities were aided by rogue police officers and had continued despite closure of the sites. The leader says police officers at the site compromised locals to hide the bodies and lied to the Inspector General that there were no deaths.
Inspector General, in short term, I will say, was deceived. And that deception, he ought to rectify. Because as a precedent that is set, is obviously repeated. He ought to stop that precedence. The presidents where citizens of this country die.
That's why the leadership was a bit disappointed with our own security system. I think we wanted to leave that at that so that the government agencies will go on and investigate what really happened and take all the necessary action. But we are set to reopen now that the place has been backfilled. There is nowhere now to sell anymore. So that story has ended.
It is a market day at the Bell Center. Locals here allege that illegal miners use motorcycles to transport bags of ore from mining sites. To confirm the allegations, we noticed that most motorcycles' indicator lights have been blocked to avoid being noticed when transporting ore. Investigations reveal that officers are selling ore to prospectors, with an officer at the Bell police post offering to sell to us 20 bags at 20,000 shillings.
Wanasema wananunua mchanga kutoka askari, pengine wale wanasikizana, so haijulikani, lakini mchanga inabebwa sijui njia gani wanatumia. Wengi ni wezi, wengi pia wengine wanasema ati wameshirikiana na maaskari wamechukua mchanga. Wakati ninaona pikipiki zikibeba mchanga mingi, pengine nikasema hii mahali imefunguliwa namna gani. Wakati nimekuja kuona askari wengine wanasema hii watu tumeshindwa kudhibiti hawa, sisi ni wachache.
On July 4th, 2024, the Bell deputy OCS reportedly committed suicide by shooting himself on the head under unclear circumstances, although reports indicate that he might have killed himself to escape accountability, as the May 24th incident where 5 people were killed happened while he was on duty.
Kusema kweli, walikuwa wanaingia pale kwa njia ya ukora, lakini wakiingia hata kwa njia ya ukora, tulishuhudia hata askari ambaye wako huko wale on the ground walishirikiana, naonekana kama wameelewana, wanachimba hiyo mgodi mjanga za dhahabu kila siku inaenda kila mahali.
Kule Dabel kumekuwa na mauaji ya watu zaidi ya 7 siku 2 zipitazo. Wengine ni watu pale wengi kutoka mataifa jirani, wengine kutoka sehemu zingine, wengine ni wakora, wengine walikuwa wanauza bangi.
With all these incidents, the Babel gold rush has been perceived by residents in the region as unfortunate, with influx of people from outside the area benefiting from the resources, with the indigenous Sekuya community, which has lived in the region for decades, terming it a disaster in waiting. But even as police deny that people sneak into the mines and are killed after the pits collapse, residents of Dabel are apprehensive that the deaths are bound to continue, even before the official reopening, since police have been compromised to let the miners in. Margaret Kimathi, NTV.
in the world of sports, as we've just hinted, we're set to bring you a one-on-one conversation with the Wiper Democratic Movement leader, Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, on a raft of issues that have played out in the year 2024. A lot of things have played out politically, talking about the Gen Z protests held mid this year that pushed cabinet to be changed. Equally, the reconstitution of IEBC that has been a sore issue in the country, bearing in mind that we're bordering on a constitutional crisis. So much to talk about. So there goes the interview. We'll leave you with it. Enjoy. Greetings. We're set to have a conversation with the Wiper Democratic Movement party leader, Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, on a raft of issues that have played out in the political space in the year 2024. If you'd like to put it that way, a reflective conversation on the highs and lows of the year that has been. Your Excellency, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for welcoming us. And dare I say, happy birthday and Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you so much. I join you in telling fellow Kenyans Merry Christmas and a prosperous 2025.
Amazing. Let's start with your reflection of the year 2024, because politically a lot has played out, giving truth to the adage that a day in politics is a lifetime. So what's the state of the nation from where you sit?
In fact, Jesse, it was actually Churchill, the wartime Second World War Prime Minister of Britain, Churchill, very famous, who also famously said that a day in politics is a very long time. And I can tell you a week is very long. But that notwithstanding, 2024 has been a very critical year in the political history of Kenya. And I stress political history, and in the democratization process of our country. And in fact, in terms of putting into effect the provisions and the expectations of Constitution 2010, which is now our guiding document. Never mind the fact that those wielding instruments of power do not seem even to have read the Constitution properly. Because how on earth would anybody have thought of dealing with agencies the way they did on June the 25th? So I started by saying, redefining the political history of our country and deepening our democratic gains, which has also been very costly because we lost a lot of young people. We wanted to remind those in rulership, because they're not leaders, they are rulers, okay? There's a difference in my view. That we have a constitution. And they said we have a country also to call our own. You guys are getting old. We want the future to be guaranteed. Therefore, we want transparency in the way you conduct public affairs. We also want to see adherence to the Constitution. Therefore, June 25th, when the National Assembly was breached by young Kenyans, who were just determined to serve a document to their legislators, because in terms of provisions of Article 37 of the Constitution, the right to picket, the right to demonstrate, and peacefully unarmed. I think that's the only provision. And in this case, I think everybody knows that when the young Kenyans came out, they were not armed with stones. They were armed only with the national flag and a bottle of water and their telephones. You cannot say telephones are weapons of destruction, okay? And so later on, the state, the rulers, brought in hired goons with permission to break people's property. Can you imagine a government telling people, go and break the shops, right? Steal as much as you can, do goonism, and assign it to the innocent young demonstrators. I think that lie was called out. And therefore, I stress, Jesse, the importance of what happened in 2024 on June 25th. I said it before, that in recognition of that fact, Going forward, I would propose that June 25th becomes a national day when we remember that Kenyans, young Kenyans came out and set the example, not just for themselves and their parents and relatives, but set an example for Africa and the world.
That's really proper, giving us a reflective analysis of the highs and lows of the year 2024. I'd like to bring your attention to the recent developments that have played out in the political space. Case in point, the appointment of former President Uhuru Kenyatta's men in the broad-based government. I'd like your reaction to this because you've been vocal castigating those who have joined the Kenya Kwanza government. And perhaps you can start by highlighting if you yourself have been approached by the current government to join the broad-based government, and equally, what exactly might you say to those who have joined the Kenya Kwanza government? Does it mean the end of Azimio as we know it?
Yeah, that's a mouthful, Jesse. First of all, what you're calling Uhuru's men, I don't know. Some of them were in his cabinet, right? But their political orientation was not Jubilee. And I don't want to go into details. I think they do know. But I think these are people who are themselves desperate to join government, right? And they wanted to use Uhuru, President Uhuru. Because if Uhuru wanted to say in the broad-based government, he would have written a detailed letter to Ruto. Say, I recommend the following people be appointed to your cabinet. So but the public perception, unfortunately, is what rules the Kenyan political airspace, okay? But be that as it may, I think Uhuru himself issued a statement on I think the whole thing is premised on the fact that there was a meeting where President Ruto went to meet President Uhuru Kenyatta on a courtesy call. So a courtesy call then was followed with these appointments. And since that time, I don't think we have had any comment from President Uhuru other than what he issued and what they discussed with William Ruto. Basically, the need to have a strong opposition, the need to ensure that this economy is functional. It's because as it is in the year, and even during the negotiations, which I was privileged to lead partly on NADCO, we had evidence of 6,000 Kenyan companies migrating from Kenya to Tanzania and Uganda. Now, it makes this whole thing about getting Kenyans jobs abroad look ridiculous. Why don't you, first of all, safeguard the jobs which are in this country? But because of poor taxation policies, right, the result has been migration of capital. These things were canvassed, I understand, between Uhuru and Ruto, and the need to be tolerant. The need, I think, for William Ruto to stop being angry with everybody, angry with the citizens. I'm sure as an elder, President Uhuru, having been there before him, I'm sure they must have discussed things on how to carry yourself as a leader of a people. Not to shout down at them and say they are devils, they are peppers on a bib of pepper, things like those, okay? And yet, I think the truth is always different. So those people have joined what you are calling broad-based. I've referred to it variously as, first of all, bread-based and even blood-based. Because how do you ride on the blood that a young Kenyans, call them Gen Zs, shed, saying they want transparency and they wanted this government out? And then, of course, the other very historic occurrence during the year is impeachment of the Deputy President, Rigathi. Yeah. Was that a priority? The priority should have been NADCO, National Dialogue Committee recommendations. Top of the agenda was the reestablishment of an IEBC. That is still pending. That's why some of us have come out and said this is a matter that must be dealt with right now. If not, Kenyans have the right to go back to the streets and demand justice. So those who joined, therefore, in my view, are they experts? I don't know. Now, that team which earlier joined, the broad-based government, Again, Raila was forced to say, okay, I allow them to go. You remember ODM kept on saying, these have gone on their own. I believe even these ones are not Jubilee people. Yeah, they have gone on their own. And see, there's a law, Jesse, and I'll teach you a little law on that, in the law of jurisprudence, which stipulates that a man or a woman is taken to intend the natural consequences of their own actions. What do I mean by that? These people have joined Ruto's government, should therefore be prepared that the Kenyans will assume they have intended to be part of a group that is heavily weighing on Kenyans, overtaxing the economy of Kenyans. Any Kenyan today with a payslip is crying out, all because of the oppression, economic oppression of the ordinary Kenyan citizen. The high cost of living, which is what we dealt with under NADCO, and this administration said, no, 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 that's our responsibility. Okay. And of course, integrity to political parties. They continue to do violence to for example, Jubilee. Yeah. And I don't know whether Uhuru and Ruto will have discussed the need to let Jubilee be, because there's state capture also coming in through there. I mean, okay, the executive captured National Assembly. That's a fact. They captured the National Assembly, or shall I say parliament. Instead of seeing a complete example of separation of powers between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, an attempt, deliberate attempt by this administration to capture those institutions. Kenyans have seen this. That's why they have expressed frustrations.
So, long story short, all this political musical chairs, where does it leave Azimio? Have Raila and Uhuru formally exited Azimio La Umoja? What does a winning coalition for you look like, since the word out there is that you were banking on the support of the former president and the former prime minister going into the 2027 general election? So what does a winning...
I don't know about banking. They write checkbooks or checklists. I think you bank on Kenyans, the good of Kenyans. Yeah. Of course, the two gentlemen you refer to are statesmen, and like Uhuru is a dear brother of mine. Raila Odinga knows he has gone to look for the AU chairmanship with my full support. And so, but they are human beings. And I think that what the Gen Zs have said is, look to us. That's why we have made it very clear. Those of us still remaining in the Azimio coalition, and I want to talk about that, believe that we will and will continue to be on the side of the people. That's why we have said, careful not to use Azimio, because I notice ODM have not been talking about Azimio themselves. They're trying to strengthen their positions. I think now that they are with one leg in government and one leg outside, they're a bit kind of convoluted, I can understand. And I can understand. But the year lying ahead and the days, the years ahead will make it very clear that we are the opposition. We do not intend to remain in opposition, of course. We will hold William Ruto's administration to full account. And we'll be making a statement to give that sense of direction. Whether Azimio will remain as Azimio is a matter that I think the principles, because even as we speak, I've not seen an exit statement by the chair of the council, who is President Uhuru, or the party leader of Azimio is my brother Raila Odinga. They haven't issued any statement. Remember when Raila was leaving for AU campaigns, he handed over to Governor Peter Nyang' the leadership of ODM. He didn't hand over anybody leadership of Azimio. So we have to be realistic. And we are looking at the whole situation. My twin sister, Mother Karua, lost patience, and she said, I'm exiting, gave notice, she's exiting. I think that we may have to look at the whole situation, reevaluate, because the country needs political direction.
So what does a winning coalition look like for you? There's so much speculation outside there in terms of your partnership with the former Deputy President of the Republic, Rigathi Gachagua, who's found himself at loggerheads with the current administration, which he served not too long ago. Well, what does a winning coalition look like? Are you willing to work with like-minded and like-minded individuals for the betterment of the country?
Yeah, like-minded. This is taking shape. We have not had a formal engagement with former Deputy President Rigathi. If the need arises, we will make it clear to Kenyans. But remember, we have a leader of Democratic Action Party, former Minister for Defense, Constitutional Affairs, Eugene Wamalwa, and we have the Secretary General of Jubilee, Jeremiah Kioni. We have Babayao on board, and I can tell you a lot of other people, those interested in running for constituency seats, parliamentary seats, gubernatorial, senatorial, they're all coming on board. And so it's going to be exciting going forward, because I see serious migration from Kenya Kwanza. Remember, they started by saying everybody fold up and join Kenya Kwanza. And my friend Madivi was the first one to fold. I think now, with a bit of hindsight, he may want to reconsider, and others. So now he's saying ODM come on board. It is like, when you're attending a crusade, Jesse, advertisement in Andikwa, that is a come one, come all. Everybody to join now. No. It doesn't make sense. We are focused.
Let's talk about an issue that is bedeviling Kenyans, because as a country, we're staring at a constitutional crisis when it comes to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission reconstitution, which has been delayed for quite some time. We're in the red when it comes to the delimitation of boundaries and other activities that should be done by the commission. There seems to be blame game going on between you and the government over the delay in reconstituting IEBC. The government spokesperson mentioned that Azimio Coalition should withdraw a court injunction blocking the formation of IEBC selection panel in order to allow the government to proceed with reconstituting the IEBC. You yourself has labeled, is it Augustus Chalo as a proxy? So I just want to get your take as you set the record straight. Away from the blame game, away from the proxies, do you have a hand in the delay in reconstituting IEBC?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. All that needs to happen is William Ruto to show leadership. For example, when that government spokesman, I don't know whether it's my friend Maura, Maura, he's a friend of mine actually. When he talks like that, he doesn't have the facts. It is that Augustus Muli, who is a proxy, and I repeat, a proxy of Kenya Kwanza, who has actually filed an appeal because he lost the case. And again, to set the facts right, Azimio Coalition was given 2 slots. One went to ODM, Professor Olo Adams, and the other one to Koki Muli of Wiper, okay? And so, I mean, that's what it was. And look at the credentials of Koki Muli. And I want to know, of all the nominees, whether there's one with better credentials than Dr. Koki Muli in terms of conduct of elections. She has been in it. She's out there. And in fact, if people are thinking of a replacement for Chebukati, she could be even a candidate. But the point is that she won the court case because it was easy for Adams Olo to come through the parliamentary thing, and Wiper's candidate was supposed to convince the other 23 member parties of Azimio. And some of them are not even easily recognizable. And that is what the problem was.
So who exactly, sorry to cut you short, who exactly chose Augustus Chalo from the National Labour Party? Because according to him...
First of all, there's even a dispute about who is the leader of that party, the party that he seems to represent.
According to Augustus, he says he was elected by 16 political parties of the total 23 parties in the parliamentary liaison committee.
Okay, assume that was so. Yes. That is what was overturned by the court. because they didn't take into account, they are the one to qualify must be coming from a party with a parliamentary presence. Augustine's party does not even have one MCA anywhere in this country, leave alone an MP. So that was found to be in violation of the law by the judge, and again, gender, the issue of gender, which is critical. And by the way, yesterday I received a report that the party, which is very gender sensitive, which has done an gender audit in the country, and I challenge other political formations to come up, is only Wiper Democratic Movement, yeah, which is now compliant with the gender rule. So that is the truth about this matter. Today, if William Ruto's proxy can withdraw the appeal to the Court of Appeal, we will be on our way. Unfortunately, the stipulation is that the 9 names must be submitted, right, as one list to President Ruto. Now, there's a window of a week before they organized to get Augustus Muli to go to appeal, within which Ruto could have actually appointed but they instead organized through a judge in Kiambu, all right, to issue injunctions. So the injunctions are by Kenya Kwanza.
So do you
so
think...
this is state-sponsored litigation.
Well, where's the panacea here? An out-of-court settlement, can dialogue actually solve this impasse?
Yeah, of course not. Why not? Anything is, you can do it. Augustus Muli is a person I know. And by the way, he recorded me and gave it to Dennis Itumbi. Yeah. Then Dennis Itumbi sent it across. Can you imagine? That tells you whose project it truly is.
Okay. Let's shift focus to yet another issue, which I think is of utmost importance. What comes to mind when a judicial officer is on record questioning why the judicial filing system was inefficient during the Rigiji impeachment? What does that speak to from where you sit?
State capture of the judiciary.
And can a commission...
Interference. This is why we will have this commission, State Capture Commission. That's one of the things I'll be talking about. Because how can you interfere with the filing system of the judicial system? Please, independence of the judiciary. And I'm so happy. The country must remain grateful to Justice Lanaola for bringing this out. All right? And that is the truth. That is actually the truth. And I said here the other day, I said, of course, now what Rigathi went through is what is now forming. The clouds are forming to throw out Chief Justice herself. But of course, the process is there, form a judicial commission, you do whatever. The point is give a dog a bad name and kill it. So this is it, continuing state capture. Instead of allowing independent institutions to operate, I think William Ruto's administration is really key. I don't know why they're afraid. And on the one hand, they say, oh, we want accountability, we want a functioning. Remember, I used to say, we want a functioning official position. Hey, the opposite is, you preach water and drink heavy wine.
Your Excellency, you happened to become a legislator at the age of 32. After a by-election.
You've been doing your research.
Yeah, it seems so.
A couple of years in politics. Actually, I went in there as a Gen Z millennial.
Quite so.
So that's proper. And I want to mentor young people to take up that responsibility. That's why I've seen it all. Absolutely. Yeah, but continue.
Yes. So currently you're celebrating your 71st birthday, if I'm not wrong.
I don't count.
Oh, sorry. I let the cat out of the bag. Apologies for that. So I'd like to pose this question in such a manner that sort of speaks to your critics, because ever so often we hear of naysayers, as they're commonly referred to, tagging you with such names as, watermelon, indecisive. I'd like you to sort of coin a message in terms of your convincing capability. And sorry to say, you seem to be a gentleman in the marquee game of politics. So when it comes to your 2027 presidential bid, the big question would be sort of how to reinvent oneself in the eyes of the masses, cut an image of an effective leader, which you have been since the tender age of 32. Talk to us about your steps when it comes to
Jesse, I'm surprised when friends like the other day We were in Limuru Church, and Babaya was trying to refer to my CV. No Kenyan gets it correct. Absolutely. Yeah. Because I've actually been through the run of the mill. When I lost an election, first of all, in 1983, and though I emerged the third at the constituency level, I learned a few lessons about it. So the pain of losing an election, and then winning after during the subsequent by-election, midway, when my predecessor was killed by a policeman, okay? And having to take a decision whether you want really to go. And the struggle I had with convincing my late mother that she should allow me to run. So the pain of it all, the decision taking, and of course my late father stood with me, we convinced my mom. And then of course after that I was elected. I was a backbencher, full backbencher for a full year. And then I was appointed assistant minister for works, housing, and fiscal planning. Worked under Kenneth Matiba. In fact, I keep on telling Kenyans, when my first son, Ken, was born, was Matiba's assistant minister. He went all the way to the UK and came with a baby cot for that young man. And the late Oletipis also replaced Matiba as Minister for Works, Housing. And from there, then I became Deputy Speaker for a full 5 years. A full 5 years. Now, if you begin to count, I think I'm going to get a professional, somebody to write my CV. Becomes difficult. And people just get lost. Oh, he's been minister for ministers. No, it's true. It's not true. It's more. So including the environment. So when we talk about, for example, the challenge of the ozone layer, climate change, these are things we think we are schooled in properly. But having said that, do you hear these days anybody calling me watermelon? I haven't heard lately.
You seem to have shaken off.
I think people now know who the real watermelons are. Because in this thing, my friend, you don't keep on saying you want political debt settled. I keep on saying, no, please, it's the Kenyan people who will either elect you or reject you. And I think now, sometimes it takes a man. I once read a book again in my Form 6. I was a very good student of literature. That's why it made me go study law and other things. By Arthur Ibsen. The title of that book was The Strongest Man. One other thing. The strongest man in the world is he who stands alone. There are times when you have to stand alone for principle and for the love of your mother country. This is such a time. So the other day, I called Raila to wish him Merry Christmas, okay? And he had seen the Standard headline, the last man standing. So one would draw my attention to it. Yeah. I don't believe I'm the last man standing. I'm standing with the Kenyans. Kenyans are standing for something. For something. They want their country back. They don't want the culture of political lies to become a part of the Kenyan psyche. And I'm with them.
So as we finalize, I remember when you first stood for presidential position during the 2007 election, you were keen on saying Kibaki on this side, Raila on this side, Wona Peter Katikati.
So with they did, by the way.
That's a story for another day.
By the way?
I don't want to disclose that information here.
Okay.
So let's talk about appealing to the Gen Z voters, because we're dealing with a population that is quite informed, knows what it wants, and is keen on getting what it wants. On the other hand, we definitely have the older generation, and perhaps you could speak to the symbolism of the Akamba community being welcomed to the Gema Association, which might speak to that older generation. How do you balance these generations in Kenya in order to be perceived as the most electable candidate?
First of all, the Gen Z's position. These young people have a right to get their national identity cards unimpeded as soon as they finish Form 4, whatever, not to be charged exorbitant fees like now is happening. I saw a whole principal secretary even dismiss the importance of a national ID by saying it doesn't give you automatic citizenship. Kenyans are watching. Therefore, the ID is important. And then the need, by the way, you need to tell them the process of registration as voters is a continuous exercise. It's only that we now do not have a functioning IEBC. And the ones who are there, the chief executive officer there and others don't even know, can't make A from B, whatever. It's confusion. But as soon as this matter is settled, I would recommend a complete and very urgent registration of voters in order to come up with a clear list of registered Kenyan voters. And if that happens, I'm quite sure we're looking at anything between 20, 25, 26 million Kenyans eligible to vote. And I'm sure the majority of those, remember in 2022, a clear 8 million Kenyans didn't even vote. Now, if you add another 10 million young people, you're looking at very impressive numbers. This is a young nation. And therefore, I think the responsibility of the younger generation, the older generation, is to prepare this country, set it right again, because it's derailed, seriously derailed, put it back on the rail, prepare it, hand it over to the real owners, the Gen Zs. That's what it should be. And Kenyans must, I personally, I like political mentoring. There are young people I've mentored, and some of them are in leadership. And I think that's the way I see it. These are the matter about regional groupings. Some of them are natural, because if you talk to the Kikuyus, they call the Kambas their cousins. They are cousins and vice versa, Avonua and all that. And they remember, for example, that that was a main consideration after the 2007 general election, when the country was on a limbo, when leaders eventually were taken to ICC, the country bled. And it was mainly the Kamba leaders who approached me as the political candidate, say, we want you to work with Kibaki. It was an order. I think that was informed by some of these considerations. However, I personally think the matter should go beyond Gema, and it should look at other communities. In fact, there's a discussion going on. The A does not represent Akamba. Gema is Gema Cultural Association. So it can bring in other resolutions like Abagusi, because that is also A. Ambaluya, A, and others, Amijikendas.
Okay, as we finalize, Your Excellency, perhaps your message to Kenyans who will be watching this particular conversation as they go into 2025, some of the expectations might be high. Give them a dose of reality, what the Wiper Party leader will be doing as he plans for his State House bid.
Kenyans, I keep on reminding you, keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. The going at the moment is very rough, over taxation, no money in the pocket, don't know how even to take your students, if the ones who are qualified to go to a university education, to confusion in the education sector, all manner of confusion. But remember, God is still on the throne. Remember also that you have a responsibility to remain focused and to say no to corruption, to say no to state capture, to say no to political lies, and we will then be with you into the new year and beyond.
Thank you so much. Asante Sana. That's all we had for you. Thank you so much for your time, Your Excellency, and definitely enjoy your festivities. I'm pretty sure it'll be a busy 2025.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Asante.
Well done. Okay.
Hujambo mtazamaji, ni takriban siku 50 tangu kuapishwa kwa naibu rais Profesa Abraham Kithure Kindiki, wadhifa uliotanguliwa na miaka miwili ya usimamizi tata kwenye Wizara ya Usalama na Masuala ya Ndani ya nchi. Hii leo kwenye mkao wake wa kwanza kama naibu rais atakuwa anawaelezea Wakenya kuhusu wadhifa wake mpya pamoja na ajenda za serikali. Mimi ni Mashirima Kapombe kutoka runinga ya Citizen, lakini niko na wenzangu kutoka mashirika mbalimbali ya habari.
My name is Joel Chacha from K24 TV.
My name is Michelle Ngele Odhiambo from NTV.
And I am John Jacob Kuria from the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation.
I am Ashley Mazuri from KTN.
Good evening, I'm George Maringa from Cape Media Limited, TV47.
Karibu Profesa, na asante sana kwa muda wako. This interview will be conducted in both English and Kiswahili, so feel free to express yourself in the language that you feel most comfortable. Now let's start with the elephant in the room. When we publicize this interview, some of the reactions that we received were quite hostile on your person. And I read some of those responses that we got. One said, cancel that interview. Another one said, not worth my time. Another one called you a butcher and a murderer. Another said, who killed protesters under his leadership? Now, why would this interview generate so much hostility on your person? And why do you think Kenyans feel tonight whatever you have to say is not of value to them?
First, I appreciate and thank you for having me on this broadcast. It is, maybe I'll start by saying that not everyone is saying what you read out. There are others who are saying other things, but that is still okay because it is the right of the people of Kenya to express themselves on what they think about their leaders, especially political leaders. And therefore, mine is to confirm that, and I have no regrets for anything. Maybe lessons learned, which is a common human thing that perhaps there are things I've picked along the way. But in terms of my public duty and commitment to our national interest, I have been extremely clear on what is expected of me in the various roles that I have played in this country.
As Interior CS, where Kenyans feel that you oversaw massive brutality on Kenyans who are expressing themselves when they felt that their leaders were not representing them in the way that they should. Do you take personal responsibility for the murder of 60 people, according to the KNCHR?
Well, the violent protests that took place early this year, and even earlier on in 2023, unfortunately led to loss of lives. Some of those lives were lost in various ways, including through police action. I have no reason to take responsibility for anything because the space of violence and encounter with law enforcement is a space which is defined by law. And the role of the Minister for Interior is defined in the Constitution, Article 245, on what that role is. That role includes providing policy guidance to the organs of internal security. The role of police operations are protected through the mandate of independent command of the Inspector General, and therefore police operations, especially in engaging protesters or people who are seen as breaching the peace, is the province for the independent command of the National Inspector General of the National Police Service. As far as I'm concerned, The 2 years I have been the country's interior minister, every single day of them, when I woke up to do my work, to make sure that the security organs of our country that protect our country from threats, security threats, perform their work. And should they require any policy guidance, that guidance is provided. And that's all what I can say for now.
So you're saying tonight that you have no say whatsoever when the police misbehave?
The Interior Minister has no role in police operations, according to Article 245.
So you have no say whatsoever when they go wrong as a professor of law?
I have a say, and I said it. And the say is this, that police officers are allowed to use force, including legal force, in exceptional circumstances. Should any officer violate the strict parameters of those circumstances, they are accountable under the law. And we say it many times, not once, not even in the context of the protest alone, but also in the context of the fight against terror and the fight against banditry and other organized crime. That any police officer who uses their firearm lawfully within the Constitution, including legal force, has legal protection. But so any of them who exceeds the parameters of the Constitution is on their own, and the organs of accountability is not the Interior Minister. It is the agencies such as IPOA and the DPP and the rest.
So who shot at David Chege at the presence of Parliament and Erickson Chalo Mutisia? These two young men were not armed. Would you say that use of live ammunition was reasonable?
I think the matter of the violence that occurred in Parliament and the unfortunate loss of life is a matter that which is actively being investigated by IPOA and other agencies. So it will be preemptive for me to tell you who shot the two Kenyans who unfortunately, according to the records, lost their lives in that context.
So how far are the investigations? You're the DP now. You may have moved on to a different role, but it's definitely senior to...
I'm aware that there are two ways of conducting investigations. One is through the internal affairs unit of the police. But our policy in the last 2 years, while we were in that docket, we discouraged the internal affairs unit of the police from being the ones to investigate their colleagues because it raises issues of conflict of interest and perhaps perceptions of bias. So we encourage the independent police oversight authority to be the one to do the investigations. The report I had when I left the ministry is that they had made some good progress. They reported to me they had some 6 files which are ready from the context of the riots and the violence around that time. But there has been a transition in the leadership of IPOA right now. A new commission has just been put in place. And the work of IPOA is led by commissioners. It's not led by the secretariat. So the delay in the last 2-3 months could be associated to the leadership transition by IPOA.
Ashley and George, you have follow-ups. Ashley? All right, Your Excellency, you have made a name for yourself as a defender of human rights. Are you proud about the events that occurred in June this year? I mean, this led to deaths of young, innocent Kenyans. Where does this sit as, to you, the professor of human rights, not as the deputy president, but as the professor of human rights?
Any Kenyan, not to mention a professor of law, who would be proud by what happened in our country, June, July, from whatever angle, would be inappropriately doing so. Because those events were extremely painful to the country. They were unnecessary, if I may say so, because there is a way of processing democratic encounters. And there's a way in which the balances between the protection of public safety and the expression of individual rights and freedoms must help us navigate peaceful and orderly society. So to answer your question, I wouldn't be proud at all.
Mr. Deputy President, then what did you have to say to families who are still looking for their loved ones? For instance, on X, we were tagged and someone said, I always communicate with Peter Masharia's mom. Imagine she wakes up every day to go to the mortuary. Peter Masharia went missing on the 25th of June. Tonight, what do you tell those families that are still looking for their loved ones?
To the families who lost their loved ones or whose loved ones are still missing, I would say that it's unfortunate that this country went through what it went through in June, July. I hope that our country has learned the lessons and we will not get there again, because losing a loved one, having a loved one missing for months, almost half a year, even for a day, is extremely painful. And therefore, as I said, when I responded to this matter earlier on, maybe not on this forum, it is very unfortunate. And we, including myself, regret that our country went that direction and hope that we will not get there again.
Yet when they look at you, Professor, they say you are the face of, disappearances, abductions, deaths and murders on young people in this country. Do you feel that you're struggling to shake off that tag?
Not at all.
Okay.
Because it's
that were bereaved pleaded with the government of the day to help them with burial expenses. Did that happen? How much was spent? And there was a committal to compensate families that lost their beloved ones. What's the status of that, Deputy President?
To the best of my knowledge, a number of families were given modest ex gratia support on a request basis and on a basis of confidentiality, because what the state does in a situation like that, when there is distress in the country, citizens are facing distress, we go out of our way for ways of supporting. But normally that support is support which, first of all, is not budgeted for. So we have to look for ways of, within the security budget, absorbing some of those costs. And if I recall well, a number of families were supported on an ex gratia basis. The question of compensation is a little more complex and will require guidance, because no law would allow expenditure on compensation for events similar to what we had. I am aware, even in more extreme cases like terrorist-related deaths and injury, it is anticipated that victims of terrorist crimes and other violent acts would be compensated. And I think when we left the ministry, we were trying to develop regulations on the operationalization of Section 49 of the Prevention of Terrorism Act. I think that can form a basis of thinking how else or in which other circumstances, perhaps extreme cases of loss and injury could be compensated. So that's a discussion we are having. And I am more than willing to follow up. Even in my new role, nothing prevents me from following up and ensuring that in justifiable cases which are defined by law, where injury or loss happens and the law allows, then compensation can ensue.
So this evening you're telling Kenyans that the bereaved families will have to wait longer until the law is developed. And I'm not actually asking for specific families. These are public resources for purposes of accountability. Once again, how much was spent to settle the burial expenses?
I wouldn't know because it's not, you know, there's no vote called burial expenses. There's no vote like that. So this is ex gratia support, not just for these cases, many other cases every day that the state deals with are done ex gratia within the security operations budget. And therefore, it's not possible to pinpoint. This amount was used for burial because of the lack of a specific vote line.
On the time frame for compensation?
What about?
What time can they wait? For how long can the law be developed?
I am not sure, but we will do our best to make sure that cases where we form consensus, national consensus that require compensation are onboarded, because even in the extreme and glaring cases of terrorism, I've told you, it has taken, I think now, quite a number of years since we enacted the Prevention of Terrorism Act to operationalize that section. So I'm hoping perhaps within the year, within the coming year, we can work with the new leadership in that ministry and other stakeholders in the normal way government works and process perhaps regulations of the operationalization of some of these issues as to whether that can be expanded beyond terrorism-related incidents. That is a discussion, again, which we can open up to stakeholder inputs and have it dealt with.
It's clear, Mr. Deputy President, that the tag behind you, and my colleague Mashima Kapombe mentioned it when we mentioned that we were having this interview, is not a very rosy one. And one person in particular called you the butcher of Tharaka. I have two important questions I'd like to understand, because President William Ruto addressed the nation on the night of June 25th when protesters breached Parliament. He told the nation that that was a treasonous act perpetrated by crooks and criminals. Do you believe that the young people killed by police during the protest were crooks and criminals and not young people trying to advocate for their rights?
The protests of June started as legitimate protests by peaceful Kenyans who were expressing their rights and opinions on certain issues that they felt that needed to be handled by government differently. In the course of those protests, criminal elements infiltrated those protests. And it became very difficult. On the one hand, you have protesters whose interest is just expressing themselves within the Constitution. But within their midst, there are people killing people, hurting people, looting property. And that's how Parliament was breached, because protesting does not include breaching in Parliament, which is a restricted access facility. And that day, we came very short of the burning down of Parliament. And in the process, the chambers of the Chief Justice were also vandalized by protesters, broke the wall, broke windows and doors, and stole water and other items. So the point is, how do we balance going forward? They need to protect the right to protest, but at the same time ensure public safety. Other countries have had their occasions, like the Americans had on 6th January 2020. Similar situation. People are unhappy with an election outcome, and they just venture into constitutional institutions and run amok and bring violence. So it is unfortunate we had that mix-up between honest, legitimate protesters and cruel and dangerous criminals who really caused a lot of pain, death, destruction, and almost put down some of our institutions established under the Constitution.
There's been many questions over who gave the shoot-to-kill order. Was there a shoot-to-kill order? And Was it a show of culpability for security agencies under your command that warranted the presence of the military, the Kenya Defense Forces, to quell the situation?
There was no shoot to kill order. And the Interior Minister does not command the operations of the police. This is spelled out in Article 245 of the Constitution in very clear terms.
If there was... Your Excellency, I want to put this question to you, and it's a question of responsibility. When you vetted for the second time as the Cabinet Secretary Interior, there was a lot of praise heaped on you for combating banditry in the north of Kenya. And you appeared to acknowledge that. Was the police in the North Rift under different command, so much so that when it comes to the Gen Z protests, you're not the one in charge, but when it comes to the North Rift, you will take the glory?
At no time have I said I've been in charge of the operations on banditry, because the Minister for Interior does not play that role. Have I provided policy leadership to deal with banditry in the last 2 years? The answer is yes, in a very consequential manner, with great humility, because other than advising on the establishment of the Operation Maliza Uhalifu and the gazettement of the disturbed areas, that's the job now of the minister. Those are policy interventions. But I was able to push through in a very difficult financial situation prevailing then in the country, an injection of a significant amount of resources to acquire equipment to assist the police in their operations, which has been the missing link for many years. MRAPs, that is the mine resistance ambush protected vehicles, armored personnel carriers, drones, that is the aerial vehicles, unmanned aerial vehicles, and so many other, including personal protection items. So in a very modest way, I would want to be associated with the tremendous work done by the police, with the support of the military, to dismantle the infrastructure of banditry in the North Rift, because I provided policy support for the acquisition of modern weapons and also providing the legal space for the police to carry out operations, especially in the areas which I classified as disturbed and dangerous, because that is where criminals were always retreating and regrouping. Those areas today are completely free from bandits.
The question here, Your Excellency, is on the question of responsibility. Local NGOs, the United Nations, the US government, the foreign missions have admonished the government of the Republic of Kenya of its human rights record, and particularly the handling of a Gen Z protests. My question to you tonight is, when the Republic of Kenya is being admonished, who takes responsibility?
Well, as I have said, you see the general admonition or viewpoints by various stakeholders on the performance of government on many things, including homeland security, is a legitimate thing. But the question of responsibility arises when one believes that there is something they have done wrong. It doesn't arise when someone's conscience is crystal clear. They have not done anything wrong. From where I sit, the nearly 700 days I served as Kenya's Interior Minister, one, I can account for each of those days what I did for this country, sometimes under great distress and risk, which I knew I'm exposing myself, but because of duty, I had to do it. Some of the places I did, my predecessors never ventured into them. I spent nights in police barracks and military barracks with frontline soldiers, not to command them, but to give them moral support, including on Christmas Day, including on Easter, places like Lamu, where terror attacks were the order of the day, to give them support that the government has not sent these officers there to die. They have sent them there to protect the nation. And as minister, my moral support and the policy guidance I gave, I think, was instrumental in a big way because of the feedback I received. So to answer your question, therefore, I am not saying that our homeland security system is perfect. It is work in progress. But responsibility is individual. It's not collective.
I must remind you, Prof, and the viewers, that there's a lot of rain here, so we'll have to speak a bit louder so that we can be heard. But as you speak about policy guidelines and taking modest credits for what was done in the North Rift on banditry, are you trying to tell us that you could not give policy guidelines on how police protests or moral support in them ensuring that they adhere to human rights?
We did.
So what happened? What went wrong?
What went wrong is what goes wrong when maybe, the operations, security operations are intense and emotive operations. It's not somewhere where an officer will be told, when you reach there, do this, do this, do the other. So what we have are general policy guidelines. For example, the use of lethal force is reserved when to apply when the life of the officer is at risk.
So was
if a
any,
criminal,
was any
for example,
officer's life in
wants
danger?
to take
Allow
down,
me, Professor Kindiki, was any police officer in danger when David Shege and Enoch Chalo, Erickson Chalo Mutisia only had a flag and they were dancing outside Parliament? What threat did they pose to security officers at Parliament?
That is a matter under investigations. If the circumstances you're reading out there is what happened, the officers will be accountable. It's as simple as that.
And how long will that take?
As soon as IPOA completes the investigations and forwards the files to the DPP. Criminal investigations are complex. They involve scientific assembling of evidence. It is not enough to rush suspects to court only for cases to collapse. And it is not uniquely a Kenyan issue. Criminal investigations, especially in a complex endeavor like the situation we're referring them to, take a bit of time, and therefore I'm hopeful that...
Why were the police in mask? How complex was that? That we
Again,
could not see who was ensuring security is not breached?
You're just telling me what you think or saw,
but it was
which is part of evidence.
It was on live TV. There are photos of police officers who are masked. You can't identify them.
I'm not disputing.
But
just telling
as the
you
CS Interior,
that is part of the evidence that is required to hold into account any person who may have been involved in that unfortunate incident you're explaining.
Your Excellency, if you were to move this forward and probably look at why the public is on you. This is what you said on the 12th anniversary of the Supreme Court about a month ago. And you were talking about crucial jurisprudence. You said, I have had to ask myself whether the highest interest is the public interest or there is a higher interest called the national interest, because the public itself could hurt the national interest. Public can be mobilized or mobilize themselves against national interest. First of all, where does this national interest sit in the Constitution? And number two, wasn't this an indirect proposal of a clawback on basic freedoms that are enshrined in the Constitution, Your Excellency?
As you answer this, Your Excellency, you did say that lives of protesters need to be protected as you ensure public safety. Was the public unsafe during that period? Why did we get to that point?
When I spoke at the Supreme Court reflection colloquium on public interest and national interest, some erroneously thought I was talking about government interest or even security interest. That's not the case. In fact, after that colloquium, I've had further reflection, because by the grace of God, I'm also a scholar. So I reflect on some of these things, and I have come to the conclusion that within our constitutional framework, we can categorize 3 forms of interest that could be expressed by members of the public, rather than 2, 3. One is popular interest. And the question I'm asking myself as a scholar and a student of constitutional law is whether what is popular is in the public interest all the time. I am not sure. I am not sure that what is popular is in the public interest. I don't believe. Sometimes, yes, maybe not all the times. But at the Supreme Court colloquium, I also asked, is there a hierarchy of norms in our Constitution such that we have public interest and national interest? And for clarity and avoidance of doubt, national interest is not government interest. And it's not the interest, or it's not security. What I had in mind is, you're aware, our Constitution allows the people of Kenya to express themselves in exercise of their sovereignty in 2 ways. 1, through elections. 2, through referenda. And then I asked myself, in fact, it was tailored to the judiciary. And I wanted to ask myself, if the people of Kenya, for example, agree and express themselves in exercise of their sovereignty to change the Constitution in a referendum and vote to remove the judicial arm of government, and they decide we don't need the judiciary, people are sovereign. In a referendum, they can actually remove the judiciary. And then I asked myself, since this is an outcome of a referendum, this is in the public interest. But is it in the national, is it in the national interest that really you can have a modern country, a democratic country without a judicial arm of government?
But these are 2 different scenarios, DP, because this was about taxes that Kenyans felt were unfair, and their leaders
at the
were
Supreme
not
Court,
listening to
I
them.
was not talking about the protest at all. You can look at my statements. I was not talking about protest.
So what do you...
We were reflecting on what the Supreme Court has helped us to understand about our Constitution, and I was inviting the Supreme Court judges to start thinking whether, even as we express our sovereignty, we have what we call bedrock things that we cannot touch. I'll give you another example. If the people of Kenya meet and in a referendum, they overwhelmingly vote, so it is popular, it is in public interest, and they vote to change Article 4.2 of the Constitution that says that Kenya is a democratic multi-party state and creates a monarchy or another form of government that is not democracy. It is in the public interest. It is popular. It's in the popular interest. But is it in the national interest? My answer is that it is not. So within the Constitution, there are things you can change and still not change the DNA of our Constitution. There are others, once you touch them, the DNA of Kenya as we know it changes forever. That's what I was discussing.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that, Your Excellency, because during your vetting, following your reappointment as Interior Cabinet Secretary, you are on record saying that you will specify designated protest areas, potentially undermining the right to peaceful assembly outlined in Article 37 of the Constitution. How would you justify limiting spaces where Kenyans can express their grievances at a time when the government is facing mounting criticism, and why?
That is the practice in all democracies. Show me one democracy where people are free to express themselves anywhere, anyhow, anytime, notwithstanding the rights of other people, including traffic right for traffic to flow, and so forth. I have been, before I became minister, I was an academic. And for about 12 years, I traveled to about 100 countries around the world. So I'm very familiar with many democracies. Many of them, including the Hague, where I spent almost 7 years in the International Criminal Court trial. They designate places where you go and express yourself. Every institution actually is mandated. If it's parliament, they designate a place, and then the police gives some routine. They say between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m., a certain group will protest. And they tell the police will be about 500 and so forth. And then you protest there, you hand your petition, someone comes and receives petitions, then you vacate. Maybe in the evening, you come. That's what we might start thinking about. But as long as we think that expression of rights means you venture and frustrate everybody else who is not part of your protest, then we are courting anarchy, and that's not part of democracy.
Peaceful protest, because even if you go to Chacha, even when you saw the protests regarding the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, they were just roughed off by police. One even wonders, because we even have had leaders who have expressed a fear and concern that actually it's not even Kenyan police. So who are these that appear when Kenyans exercise the democratic freedom of picketing?
The example you have given was regrettable, and government has already addressed itself to that issue. The Principal Secretary for State Department for Internal Security did
Don't you think the precedences are too many?
Not really. I don't think so. And I think with the apology that the State Department gave, I think Kenyans should give government the benefit of doubt. Because if the intention was to keep on doing this thing, then an apology was unnecessary. If you know you're going to do it again, you just keep quiet and do it the following day.
Did you realize this only when you became the interior boss? And despite having served in various capacities in the leadership of the Senate, you didn't think of introducing that bill then?
In 2015, I introduced the Homeland Security Bill, which, as leader of majority in the Senate, which was taken up and became part of it, is what became the miscellaneous security laws of 2014. I know some parts of that law were struck out, but 85% of those laws are what has made Kenya
specifically
stable,
on limiting the protesters.
The security laws did not cover the issue of protest, but it covered a wide range of issues that we needed to deal with to make sure that our country is safe. But on the other hand, legislation is work in progress. It doesn't end with one piece of legislation. It happens every day. Democracies which have been in place for 300 years are still making law, even security-related laws. So I did my bit in certain aspects, as in the example I've given you, but it is not true that when somebody serves as a member of parliament or Senate, everything that needs to be legislated will be done during that time.
DP, as we wrap this topic up, there's one question that many Kenyans would like to know. In a Citizen TV interview after the protests, you said that infiltrators were linked to elements within government and opposition. And you said we have evidence leading to political operatives from across the political divide. We will prosecute. How far are we with that? How many of those planners or operatives?
Last time I checked, I've been following up after that. And you know, that's not too long ago. That was July. After that, as you're aware, the cabinet was dissolved. The entire cabinet for that period around August, there was no cabinet. July, August, and then September, the vetting. So by the time I went back to the ministry, it was sometimes, I think,
August, October, I can't remember the date. And we are following up on that process. As much as I know, a number of people have already recorded statements, and as far as I know, a file was forwarded by the DCI to the DPP, but it was returned to seal certain gaps that have been discovered by the DPP, and therefore that is work in progress. As I said, criminal investigations take long, but I'm sure there will be accountability for everyone who may have either incited violence or taken advantage of the peaceful protest to infiltrate that democratic process.
But you said you have evidence. Why should it take long? Or is it only a preserve of the political class?
That evidence, I have just told you that it was presented to the DPP, and the DPP said it was not enough to convict. You can have evidence which is not enough to convict. I could believe, okay, that the evidence is enough, but the DPP, who has the final say in qualitative and quantitative evidence, is the one who has the police to do more work if we have to sustain prosecution.
So the police didn't do a very good job. That's what you're saying in the investigation.
This is routine. It happens every day, not just in Kenya, all over the world. The police do their work, and that's why there's that two-tier mechanism. So the DPP looks at it and said, no, we need to fill this using the elements of crime. You need the evidence of this. So we cannot say the police didn't do a good job. It happens every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would like to move to the next topic, which is your ascension to power as the deputy president and the politics around it. And this session will be led by Ashwin Mazuri.
All right, Your Excellency, did you play a role in Rigathi Gachagwa's ouster?
No.
Then are you proud of the process, the impeachment process that many said were flawed, that led to that led to your ascension to power as the deputy president?
The process you are referring to, I think, involved three arms of government: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. To that extent, to the extent that constitutional institutions were involved and are still involved, I see no problem with that process. And if there is a problem, there is a way of remedying that problem.
What about the right to fair hearing that he did not get?
That is the matter before court, unless you want me to discuss the merits of the matter before court.
So then what's your relationship between you and the ousted, impeached deputy president?
As it was before.
Are you friends or not?
We are good people, we're good friends. I have no reason to complain in the past, present, and even in the future.
Was there a handover?
Yes.
An official handover?
Was there an official handover?
There wasn't an official handover because the former deputy president is in court. You wouldn't expect him to hand over if he's in court.
Your Excellency, which IBC cleared you? Did you take your papers there? How were you cleared by the IBC?
There's no requirement to clear a deputy president who ascends to office by virtue of Article 145 read together with 150.
But the
what requires the clearance of IBC is the president and the deputy president in an election.
The president's memo to Parliament, Your Excellency, indicated that the nomination was cleared by IEBC.
There was no election. I assumed office through a process different from a process following an election.
Is it an indictment of the judiciary, Your Excellency? Because the former deputy president, through a court process, is actually outside. We have the governor of Meru, who is in office, even through a similar process. What kind of jurisprudence is that creates two forms of justice in your own understanding? And this is from a point of view as a law professor.
First, the two cases you've cited were beneficiaries of court injunctions. The only difference is in one, after the inter partes hearing of the matter around whether or not the injunction should be preserved. In one case, the court found that the injunction needed to be lifted. In the second case, which also there has been an injunction, the court found yesterday that there is no need to lift the injunction. That's the only difference. And it happens in courts all the time, not just in Kenya, all over the world. In fact, the finding of one court is in many cases overturned by the next court the following day. So there is no inconsistency whatsoever. That is judicial practice. A judge, even one bench of 3 judges, one judge will say this, 2 other judges will say different things, on the same subject matter, same articles, same evidence, same parties. That's how, that's the independence of the judiciary is not just institutional. It is individual, it's decisional. Every judge carries decisional independence.
Your predecessor, Your Excellency, says the reason you ascended to this position is because you are a yes man. You cannot mount any challenge whatsoever to the president. I'm putting this question to you tonight. Are you your own man? Are you a yes man?
I am my own man. On the second issue, I would like to respond as follows. My understanding of the role of the deputy president is not to challenge the president. It is not in the constitution. It is not in any law. It is not in any practice. That is not the job description of the deputy president. As to whether the deputy president can advise the president, the answer is yes. The oath of office I took has a clause that asks me to faithfully advise the president when my advice is sought.
So then where does your allegiance lie? To the people or your appointing authority?
My allegiance lies on the oath of office I took. You look at the oath of office, it will tell you where my allegiance is.
And are you proud
of the people of Kenya, to the nation and the national interest? And when my counsel is sought by the president, I must give it faithfully. And faithfully doesn't mean that I do it on the podium. But it means I have to be faithful, and faithfully means it could be different from what the president thinks.
DP, are you proud of the manner in which you became deputy president? In 2022, you were a front runner to be running mate to Dr. William Ruto, but you did not get that position. And you actually said you were going to take a break from politics. Are you now proud that 2 years down the line, you are the one who has taken that position after the impeachment on the person who was picked over you?
I have no regrets for my occupying this space because I have no reason to regret. It is true, I was a front runner to be deputy president in 2022. The whole process that was conducted by my party, I was not successful. My brother, Rigathi Gachagua, was successful. I congratulated him, and I said 2 things. One, that I will support the campaign, the presidential campaign, until 8th or 9th of August, 2022. And after that, I will take a break from elective and appointed positions.
But you still took the CS
Just a moment.
Position.
Just a moment. After I made those 2 very important decisions, which I made after soul searching and consulting everyone who needed to be consulted, my party and its leadership met and persuaded me as a member of the party, because I didn't say I'll leave the party. I'll say that I'll campaign for President Ruto and his deputy, but after that, I'll not be running for any office. I'll take a break for 10 years. And therefore, the party met and persuaded me to change my mind and accept an appointive position as Minister for Interior, which I accepted. That's all.
Are you the kingpin of the Mount Kenya region?
Which office is that?
Of course, you are
endorsed by a section of members from majorly the East, where you hail from. You never dismissed that.
Which office is that?
Your Excellency, other than the kingpin issue, there are a majority of members of parliament who met in Nanyuki from the Mount Kenya region. That is before you ascended to the office of deputy president, and endorsed yourself as their link in government. You have ascended to that office now. Are you now, have you ceased being their link?
Maybe you should ask them. Because I think the members of parliament, because I didn't say it, they said it. So maybe they can say it again if they wish. But to the best of my recollection, those members of parliament had expressed frustrations in getting their constituency development agenda through to government because of the breakdown of relationship they had with the former occupier of this office. And therefore, they asked me whether I could convey their needs to the president. And because I was a member of the cabinet, I saw no problem with that. But whether or not they will continue asking me to convey their messages, it's up to them to decide.
Your Excellency, that region. Sir, you come from that region, the Mount Kenya region. Tharaka-Nithi, where you come from, is nestled in Mount Kenya region. I want to know, because Kenya Kwanza had promises it made towards the people of that region. So who will be pushing for the implementation of these promises?
That region, like other regions in Kenya, has very many elected leaders. The office I occupy now as deputy president, and therefore, the way I see it is that the people from the region you're referring to, which happens to be where I was born and raised, have a right, just like the people from the coast, Western, Nyanza, Rift Valley, Northeastern. They have a right to use this office, because it's a national office, to channel their needs, interest to the government. So I see no contradiction. I see no change of position. And the only thing I don't understand is this thing about is the kingpin or something. I don't understand it because there is no office. Thing I don't understand is this thing about is the kingpin or something. I don't understand it because there is no office like that.
Well, and are you still hopeful, and do you think there is a possibility of you becoming William Ruto's running mate come 2027?
How would I know?
Your Excellency, then you've talked about development and, those members of parliament using this office to lobby for development. Shouldn't then the development be a democratic right so that then there is no need to lobby and to push for it?
That's not true. The reason you have subnational representation of political leaders, members of the National Assembly, members of the Senate, their mandate is subnational. A member of the National Assembly represents the interests, priorities of the constituency where they are elected. Of course, in the context of a broader national perspective, because some of the things that they want them passed are not projects and programs, they are legislative in nature, and you require the parliament as a whole to support you. For example, recently we had a Sugar Act sponsored by a member of parliament from Western Kenya, where sugar is mostly grown. But it required the votes of the member for the members from Northeastern Coast, where there's no sugar, and Central, to pass it. So the point is this: it is not true to say that a member of parliament does not need to articulate the interest of their people, because they are elected purposely for that. They are elected to articulate those interests and convey them either to the executive, to the legislature, and make sure that those interests at that local level are realized.
During your inauguration, when you took oath of office, your boss, the president, Dr. Ruto, said he felt he was a lone voice in the executive. From your interaction,
in my place, I wouldn't know how he's feeling at the moment. All I can say is that I'm doing my best to do my constitutional duty. That constitutional duty is being principal assistant to the president and also helping him in the delegated assignments that he has given me, and I'm doing my best. How he's feeling now, I cannot be, it's not in my place to tell you how happy he is. Or
do you think he's confident of what you're doing? Is he happy with
I think your work? So. I have no reason to doubt that he's confident.
You've been deputy president for only 50 days now. What would you say is the qualitative difference between you and the former deputy president, given that the operating environment hasn't changed?
It will be very improper for me to start comparing myself with my brother, the second deputy president.
The president has spoken very highly of your leadership and your contributions, as my colleague George Maringa here says. If the president feels that he has accomplished his key goals and decides not to run for re-election, would you consider running yourself? Do you believe that you have what it takes to run the country?
That question is an unfair question. Am I allowed to complain?
Why is that?
It is an unfair question. Because I have just been entrusted with a very serious and grave national responsibility. What is weighing in my mind now and what is really, really occupying me is the desire to discharge those obligations, because the expectations of the people of Kenya, the expectations of the president are so high. If I started occupying myself with ideas of what will happen, I don't know when, I'll be the most unsuitable person to be seated before you today.
Your Excellency, I want to rephrase Michelle's question regarding you and the former deputy president. Let's not even go with the qualitative differences. But clearly there are lessons you must have learned from Gachagwa's tenure in office. What lessons are those?
You know, my friend, you know, in leadership is defined by certain ethos and parameters. And I want to persuade you to allow me not to discuss my brother, the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, because he's my friend. And you've not heard me bad-mouthing him anywhere before when he was in this office or even after he left office. So please spare me, because it is not right. It is wrong to start comparing myself with the predecessor or someone who occupied this office now or in the past, or a person who would occupy.
Are you being cautious, Your Excellency? The region you come from is very restive, and it's quite a significant. It has quite a significant portion in terms of votes. Are you being cautious now? When I ask you the question of lessons you've learned, are you being cautious not to antagonize the former deputy president?
I have no reason to antagonize anybody. For what?
Your Excellency, perhaps just to buttress on what John Kiora said, when it comes to lessons learned, many have said that the seat that you occupy now, the deputy presidency, has some sort of curse. They've called it the curse of the deputy presidency. And every individual who's held this seat has had some sort of, falling into political oblivion. Do you believe that you have the magic wand to change this so-called curse of the deputy?
I don't believe any seat is cursed. Let's start from there. Secondly, I don't think it is a priority to start thinking whether I'll survive in this seat or not. As I have said, what is weighing in my mind, the same way when I became Interior Minister, and the North Rift was in that shape. Lamu, Boni was in that shape, and Northern Kenya was that shape. I told myself, including the passport crisis, I said, if I will last here for 1 year, I want to try my best and have these challenges under control. So for me, I cannot start now entertaining myself on what will happen to me, whether I'll succeed here or there. That's not for me to determine. It's beyond me. What is within my reach, what is within my control, is the focus to deliver on the job. As to whether I survive or what happens, that is not within my reach, and I cannot control what I cannot control.
DP, we need to move forward to the next topic, but I would like to end this with this question. The mountain which you seem to be avoiding is hostile ground right now, and not just the mountain. The government is struggling with its popularity. As the president's principal assistant, how are you working to change that perception of Kenyans? And more so those who are...
Did you say that the mountain is restive?
Yes. The reception in Embu, for example.
Yes.
In Nyandarua the other day, residents refused to listen to the president's speech. In Nakuru County, at a burial, again, they did not want to listen to the president's
That is democracy.
message.
That's how democracy works.
Is in that hostile
democracy
ground to the government that you serve as deputy president now?
You see, there is a difference between running governments and being popular. Those are two different things. And for me, a leader should be least worried about popularity. The worry of a leader should be their pace and focus on transforming the lives of the people.
And you
A
think
good leader is not necessarily one who is popular all the time. However, a good leader knows when to be popular.
Don't you think that popularity has gone down because Kenyans' lives
I really don't think so, because at the moment, President Ruto and his administration now in the midterm is not in their priority to look for popularity. There is no election taking place. The task of the government now at midterm is to track the pace of delivery, where there are gaps, seal those gaps, and just deliver on the commitments. The time will come when there will be popularity contests. And let me tell you, for avoidance of doubts, that is not President Ruto's worry. I also don't think that should be the worry of this administration. If we start worrying about popularity now, we'll lose it, time will elapse. We could even win the election next time, but we will not have delivered as we ought to deliver.
Your Excellency. And that transformation that you're talking about, Ashley, allow me, is what brings us into the next topic, which is about the economy. And Joel Chacha is going to lead that session.
Well, the government of the day boasts of a 2.8% inflation rate, which is a 17-year low. But the question here is on the shrinking disposable income, that is through what many may consider overtaxation. And the purchasing power, hence, is low. How are you working to ensure that there is money in the pockets of Kenyans?
Thank you. When President Ruto took over leadership of this country in 2022, the 5 or 6 macroeconomic indicators were not looking good. And I need to clarify now that I have this opportunity. Many people think when we project that time frame so that to show the distance we have covered, we are casting aspersions at the previous administration. That is not true. Kenya got to where it was in 2022 because of factors mainly beyond the control of President Uhuru Kenyatta, because the country's economy was shut down for nearly 2 years by COVID-19. No economic activity. And then, of course, the war in Ukraine, and which affected the global supply chain of wheat and other oil and foodstuffs, and many other factors. So when we refer to 2022, it is not political. It's just a fact. And in any case, that's the only way we can explain what we have done. Now, straight to your issue. The macroeconomic indicators were bad. The dollar was rising on a daily basis, 160. At one point, it approached 170. The price of fuel, the same. At one point, it approached 217 per liter for petrol, super. Then inflation was 9.6%. And then if you take the 6 basic food items, starting with unga, the main ones, again, the prices were much